Some people run from their future, others run from their past, and a rare few run from both, desperate to find a present where they can simply breathe. This is the story of a woman who ran until she had nowhere left to go, who collapsed in a stable, hoping for just one night of safety. And the Duke who found her at dawn, shivering and terrified, and made a choice that would change both their lives forever. This is a story about escape, about survival, about the courage it takes to trust again when trust has been shattered beyond recognition. Rosalind Fairfax was 26 years old when she ran. She'd been running in one way or another for 3 years, but this time was different. This time, she had nothing left. No money, no food, no plan, just the clothes on her back and the desperate need to put distance between herself and the man who'd made her life a living hell. She walked through the night, stumbling over roots and stones, her thin cloak doing nothing against the autumn cold. When she saw the estate in the distance, massive, dark, silent, she made a decision, born of pure desperation. She would hide in the stables, just for one night, just to rest. Duke Julian Westbrook rose at dawn, as he always did. At 34, he was a man of rigid routine. He walked his estate every morning, checking on his lands, his tenants, his horses. He found peace in these solitary walks, in the quiet before the household stirred. That morning, as he approached the stables, he noticed something odd. One of the stable doors was slightly ajar. His horses were valuable. Theft was a real concern. Julian quickened his pace, prepared to confront whoever had broken in. What he found instead stopped him cold. A young woman, curled in the hay, shivering violently even in sleep. And on her face, visible even in the dim morning light, were bruises. Today we're going to tell you what happened when a duke found a desperate woman in his stables, how he made the choice to help rather than turn her away, how Rosalind slowly, painfully learned to trust again, how Julian discovered that his carefully ordered life had been missing something crucial, purpose beyond duty. We'll tell you about the past that hunted Rosalind, about the man she was running from, about the moment when that past caught up with her and Julian had to decide just how far he was willing to go to protect a woman he was falling in love with. This is a story about finding safety in unexpected places. Let's begin. But first you need to understand Rosalind's past. 3 years earlier she'd been a different person, the daughter of a baron engaged to marry Lord Vincent Ashford, a man who seemed perfect, charming, wealthy, well-connected. Everyone told Rosalind how lucky she was, and at first she believed them. Vincent was attentive during their courtship. Flattering, he made her feel special. But after the engagement things changed, slowly at first, comments about her appearance, criticism of her behavior, suggestions that she needed to improve herself to be worthy of him. Rosalind tried harder, tried to be perfect, but perfect was never enough. The first time Vincent hit her, it was 2 months before the wedding. She'd disagreed with him about something trivial. Rosalind couldn't even remember what. His hand connected with her cheek with shocking force. She stood there, stunned. Vincent immediately apologized. He was so sorry. He didn't know what came over him. The stress of wedding planning. He'd never do it again. Rosalind, confused and ashamed, forgave him. She told no one. And a month later, when he did it again, she still told no one. Because by then, Vincent had isolated her from her family and friends, convinced her that she was difficult, that she provoked him, that no one else would ever want her. Julian stood frozen in the stable doorway, trying to process what he was seeing. The woman was young, perhaps mid-20s. Her dress was torn and dirty, her auburn hair tangled with hay. But it was her face that held his attention, pale with exhaustion, marked with bruises in various stages of healing. Someone had hurt this woman, repeatedly. Julian felt anger flash through him, followed immediately by concern. She was shivering violently despite the blanket she'd apparently pulled over herself from the tack room. She needed help, medical attention, warmth, food. Julian approached quietly, not wanting to startle her awake. But the moment he stepped on a loose board, her eyes flew open. The terror in those eyes hit Julian like a physical blow. The woman scrambled backward, pressing herself against the stable wall, her arms coming up defensively. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse, "please don't hurt me. I'll leave. I'm sorry." I just needed somewhere to sleep. I'll go, please. Julian stopped immediately, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. It's all right, he said gently. I'm not going to hurt you. This is my estate. I'm just checking the stables. Are you hurt? Rosalind stared at him, trying to assess the threat. He was tall, well-dressed, clearly the owner of this magnificent property. His voice was calm, but men could lie with calm voices. I'm fine, Rosalind lied, still pressed against the wall. I'll leave now. I'm sorry for trespassing. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out. She'd walked all night, hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the cold had seeped into her bones. Julian moved forward instinctively to catch her, but stopped when she flinched violently. Don't touch me! Rosalind's voice was sharp with panic. Julian froze again. I won't, he promised. But you're not fine. You're clearly exhausted and cold. And those bruises... He gestured to her face. Someone hurt you. Rosalind's hand flew to her cheek, as if she'd forgotten the marks were visible. Shame flooded her. I fell, she whispered. The oldest lie. Julian's expression was gentle but knowing. I don't believe you, but I'm not going to force you to tell me the truth. What I am going to do is offer you help. There's a cottage on my estate. It's empty right now. You can stay there, rest, get warm, eat. No one will bother you. And when you're ready, if you want to tell me what happened, I'll listen. If you don't, that's fine too. But I'm not leaving you in a stable. Rosalind wanted to refuse, wanted to run. But she was so tired, so cold, so hungry, and something in this man's eyes, concern without demand, kindness without expectation, made her want to trust him, even though trust had nearly killed her before. Why would you help me? Rosalind asked, her voice barely audible. You don't know me. Julian crouched down to be at her eye level, careful to maintain distance. Because you need help. That's reason enough. I have resources. You need safety. It's a simple equation. Rosalind studied him. She'd learned to read men, to watch for the signs of violence, the tightening jaw, the clenched fists, the cold eyes. This man showed none of those signs, but Vincent hadn't either at first. If I stay, Rosalind said carefully, I need your word. No one can know I'm here, and if anyone comes looking for me, you'll tell them you've seen nothing. Julian heard the fear underlying the request. You have my word. Julian stood slowly. Can you walk if I help you? I promise I'll only touch you as much as necessary to get you to the cottage. Rosalind hesitated, then nodded. She couldn't stay in the stable, and she was so tired of running. Julian approached carefully, offering his arm. Rosalind took it, and they made their slow way out of the stable. The morning sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Under other circumstances, Rosalind might have found it beautiful, but all she could think about was getting inside, somewhere Vincent couldn't see her from the road, somewhere with walls and a door that locked. Julian felt the tension in Rosalind's grip. She was terrified. Of what? Of whom? The cottage was small but well maintained. A bedroom, a sitting room, a small kitchen. Julian helped Rosalind inside and immediately went to light the fire. I'll send someone with food and clean clothes, he said, not looking at her. He was giving her space, Rosalind realized, letting her have the room without his imposing presence. Thank you, Rosalind whispered. Julian finally turned. What's your name? Rosalind hesitated. Names could be traced, but he'd offered her sanctuary. She owed him something. Rosalind. She didn't offer her surname. Julian nodded as if he understood. I'm Julian Westbrook, Duke of Ashmore. But you can call me Julian. Rosalind's eyes widened. A duke. She'd sought refuge on a duke's estate. Julian saw her panic. My title doesn't matter here. You're safe, Rosalind. I promise you that. No one will hurt you on my land. Rosalind wanted to believe him. How can you promise that? You don't even know what I'm running from. Julian's expression was serious. I don't need to know. Whatever it is, whoever it is, they won't get past me. You have my word as a gentleman and as a duke. Those words, spoken with such quiet certainty, broke something in Rosalind. She started to cry. Great, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. Years of held-back tears. years of fear and pain and desperate survival. Julian stood helplessly, wanting to comfort her, but knowing touch was the last thing she needed right now. While Rosalind cried in the cottage, "Let's go back 3 days. To understand how she ended up in Julian's stable, you need to know what she was running from." 3 days ago, Rosalind had been living in a small boarding house in a village 20 miles from Ashmore. She'd been hiding there for 6 months, working as a seamstress under a false name. It was the longest she'd stayed anywhere since leaving Vincent 2.5 years ago. She'd thought she was safe. She'd let her guard down. That was her mistake, because Vincent had never stopped looking for her, and he'd finally found her. Rosalind had been walking back from delivering finished work to a client when she saw him, Vincent Ashford, standing outside her boarding house talking to her landlady. Rosalind's blood turned to ice. She ducked into an alley before he could see her. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might be sick. How had he found her? She'd been so careful, changed her name, avoided her usual haunts, told no one where she was from. But somehow Vincent had tracked her. Rosalind didn't wait to find out how. She ran, left everything she owned, her few clothes, her sewing supplies, the small amount of money she'd saved. She just ran, because she knew what Vincent would do if he caught her. Rosalind had left Vincent 3 years ago, a week before their wedding. She'd finally found the courage after he'd beaten her so badly she couldn't stand. He'd been angry because she'd spoken to another man at a party, just a polite conversation, nothing more. But to Vincent it was betrayal, disrespect, proof that Rosalind was trying to humiliate him. The beating had lasted hours. When Vincent finally left her lying on the floor, promising it would be worse if she ever embarrassed him again, Rosalind made her decision. She waited until he left for his club. Then she took what money she could find, a few pieces of jewelry to sell, and disappeared into the night. For 3 years Rosalind had been running. Vincent had sent people after her, hired investigators, spread word that his unstable fiancée had run away and needed to be found for her own safety. Rosalind had stayed ahead of them by never staying anywhere long, by changing her appearance, by living on the margins of society where no one asked questions. She'd worked as a maid, a seamstress, a shop assistant, whatever would pay enough to survive. She'd gone hungry more times than she could count, slept in places that made the stable seem luxurious, all to stay free. Because Rosalind knew, if Vincent ever caught her, he wouldn't let her go again. He'd kill her first. So 3 days ago, when Rosalind saw Vincent, she ran. She walked through the night, avoiding main roads, staying in the shadows. By the second night, she was exhausted, starving, disoriented. She'd gotten turned around and wasn't sure which direction she was heading. When the rain started, cold and relentless, Rosalind almost gave up, almost let herself collapse on the roadside and let whatever happened happen. But some stubborn part of her refused to quit, refused to let Vincent win, so she kept walking. And when she saw the lights of Ashmore Estate in the distance, she made for them like a drowning person reaching for a lifeline. The stables were unlocked. The hay was soft. For one night, Rosalind let herself stop running. Now back in the cottage, Rosalind's sobs had subsided to quiet tears. Julian had left her alone, as promised. A maid, an older woman with kind eyes, had brought food, clean clothes, and hot water for washing. She'd asked no questions, just left everything, and departed with a gentle "Ring if you need anything, miss." Rosalind ate mechanically. The food was delicious, but she barely tasted it. She was too numb, too overwhelmed. She washed her face and changed into the clean dress the maid had brought. It was simple but well made, far nicer than anything Rosalind had worn in years. Then she lay down on the bed, soft, warm, safe, and for the first time in 3 days let herself truly sleep. When Rosalind woke, it was late afternoon. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory flooded back. The stable, the Duke, the cottage. Rosalind sat up quickly, panic rising. How long had she slept? What if Vincent had tracked her here? What if the Duke had decided she was too much trouble and called the authorities? But the cottage was quiet, peaceful. Through the window, Rosalind could see gardens, trees, the edge of what looked like a lake. It was beautiful, safe, at least for now. Rosalind knew she couldn't stay. She was putting the Duke at risk just by being here. She should leave tonight, keep moving. But the thought of going back out into the cold, the hunger, the fear, she couldn't, not yet. A knock on the door made Rosalind jump. "Rosalind!" It was Julian's voice. "May I come in?" Rosalind's instinct was to refuse, but this was his property, his cottage. She couldn't refuse him. "Yes," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. Julian entered, carrying a tea tray. "I thought you might like some tea. You've been asleep for 8 hours. I wanted to make sure you were all right." He set the tray on the table and stepped back, giving her space. Rosalind noticed how carefully he moved around her. No sudden movements, keeping distance, announcing his presence. He was being incredibly thoughtful. "Thank you," Rosalind said quietly, "for everything. I'll leave tomorrow. I don't want to cause you trouble." Julian shook his head. "You're not causing trouble, and you don't have to leave tomorrow or the day after. Rosalind, I don't know what you're running from, but you're clearly terrified. I'm offering you sanctuary, for as long as you need it." Rosalind felt tears threaten again. Why was this stranger being so kind? Why? The word came out as a whisper. Julian sat down, careful to choose a chair far from where Rosalind stood. "My mother," he said quietly. "She was in a situation similar to yours, I think, with my father. He was violent, cruel. She had nowhere to go, no one to help her. She endured years of abuse because she had no choice. I was too young to protect her. She died when I was 15. Rosalind stared at Julian, seeing pain in his eyes that matched her own. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Julian's smile was sad. "So am I. I swore then that if I ever had the power to help someone in a similar situation, I would. So, here we are. You need help. I can provide it. Please stay, recover. And when you're ready, if you want to tell me your story, I'll listen. If not, that's fine too. But you're safe here, Rosalind. I give you my word." Rosalind wanted to believe him, desperately, but trust was so hard. Julian seemed to sense her struggle. "You don't have to decide now. Just stay tonight, then tomorrow, decide again. One day at a time." Rosalind nodded slowly. One day at a time. That she could manage. Rosalind stayed. One day became two. Two became a week. Julian kept his word. He made sure she had everything she needed, but gave her space. He didn't push for her story, didn't ask intrusive questions. He simply let her exist in peace. For Rosalind, it was surreal. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't looking over her shoulder, wasn't planning her next escape. She could breathe. The cottage became her sanctuary. She spent her days reading books from Julian's library, walking in the gardens when she felt brave enough to leave the cottage, and slowly, very slowly, beginning to heal. The bruises on her face faded, the constant tension in her shoulders eased. She started to sleep through the night. Julian visited every afternoon, always announcing himself before entering. He brought books he thought she might enjoy, news from the estate, small gifts, a shawl when the weather turned colder, a journal when he noticed her love of writing, flowers from the greenhouse. Never anything too personal, never anything that demanded gratitude or reciprocation. Just small kindnesses that slowly chipped away at Rosalind's defenses. They began to talk. At first about safe topics, books, weather, the estate, but gradually the conversations deepened. Rosalind learned that Julian had never married, that he devoted himself to managing his estates and caring for his tenants, that he was lonely, though he never said it directly. Julian learned that Rosalind loved literature, especially poetry, that she had a sharp mind and sharper wit when she felt safe enough to show it, that she'd been educated well before everything fell apart, that she mourned the life she'd lost, but was grateful to be alive. He noticed how she flinched at sudden movements, how she positioned herself near exits, how she never fully relaxed, always watchful. It broke his heart. He found himself thinking about her constantly, wondering if she'd eaten, if she was warm enough, if she was afraid, if she needed anything. He told himself it was just concern, just his protective instinct, but he knew deep down it was becoming something more. 2 weeks after Rosalind arrived, Julian brought a chess set to the cottage. "Do you play?" Rosalind looked at the board with something like hunger. I used to. It's been years. Julian set up the pieces. Then let's play, if you'd like. They played. Rosalind won handily. Julian laughed, genuinely delighted at being beaten so thoroughly. You're exceptional at this. Rosalind smiled, the first real smile Julian had seen. My father taught me. Before everything. The smile faded. Julian made a mental note. Her family was part of the before, part of what she'd lost. They played another game. This time Julian paid better attention, but Rosalind still won. 2 out of 3? He asked. Rosalind nodded, smiling again. Chess became their ritual. Every afternoon Julian would arrive with the board. They'd play and talk. Gradually, Rosalind began to share pieces of her story. Not the whole truth, not yet, but fragments. She'd been engaged once. It hadn't worked out. She'd left. Her family had disowned her for breaking the engagement. She'd been on her own ever since. Julian listened without judgment, reading between the lines. The engagement hadn't just not worked out. The man had hurt her. The family who should have protected her had failed, and Rosalind had spent years paying the price for escaping. Julian wanted to ask who the man was, where Rosalind's family lived, but he knew pushing would make her retreat, so he waited. One evening, 3 weeks after Rosalind arrived, a storm rolled in. Thunder shook the cottage. Lightning illuminated the windows. Rosalind, who'd been reading, dropped her book and pressed herself into the corner, hands over her ears, trembling violently. Julian, who'd been about to leave, immediately knelt at a distance. "Rosalind, Rosalind, it's just a storm. You're safe." But Rosalind wasn't hearing him. She was somewhere else, somewhere terrifying. "Please," she whimpered. "Please stop, I'm sorry, I'll be better, please." Julian's heart broke. She was reliving something, some trauma triggered by the storm. "Rosalind," he said more firmly, "look at me. You're at Ashmore, you're safe. I'm here, no one is going to hurt you." Hurt. Slowly, Rosalind's eyes focused on Julian. She saw him, really saw him, and reality came crashing back. She was in the cottage, not in Vincent's house, not being beaten while thunder covered her screams. She was safe. Rosalind's breathing was ragged. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm sorry, I don't know what happened." Julian's voice was gentle. "You don't need to apologize. Rosalind, may I come closer? May I sit beside you?" Rosalind hesitated, then nodded. Julian moved slowly, sitting next to her but not touching. "Can you tell me what you remembered?" Rosalind closed her eyes. She'd kept the worst of it locked away for so long, but something about Julian, his kindness, his patience, his understanding made her want to share the burden. "The storm," Rosalind whispered. "It reminded me of a night 2 years ago. Vincent, my former fiancé, he was angry because I'd questioned one of his decisions. He dragged me outside during a thunderstorm, said if I was going to act like an animal, I could sleep in the kennel with the dogs. He locked me out there all night." Rosalind's voice cracked. "I was so cold, so scared. The thunder was so loud, and I kept thinking, this is how I die, frozen and alone and forgotten." Julian felt rage unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "Rosalind?" he said, his voice carefully controlled. "What was this man's full name?" Rosalind looked at him, seeing the fury in his eyes. "Why?" Julian met her gaze. "Because I want to destroy him." Rosalind shook her head. "No, Julian, no. If you confront him, he'll know where I am. He'll come for me. Please, just let it go." Julian wanted to argue, wanted to hunt down this Vincent and make him pay for every moment of terror he'd inflicted. But Rosalind's eyes were pleading, and Julian realized this wasn't about his anger. This was about Rosalind's safety, her choice. "All right," he said quietly. "I won't do anything without your permission." "But Rosalind, he should pay for what he did to you." Rosalind's laugh was bitter. "Men like Vincent never pay. They're too powerful, too protected. That's why I ran. It was the only justice I could get." Julian took her hand carefully. "Then running was brave. You saved yourself." Rosalind looked at their joined hands. It was the first time Julian had touched her beyond steadying her arm, and instead of flinching, instead of panic, she felt safe. "Thank you," she whispered. For understanding, for not pushing, for just not being kind. Julian squeezed her hand gently. You don't need to thank me for basic decency, Rosalind. You deserve so much more than you've received. Rosalind's eyes filled with tears. Do I? Sometimes I wonder if Vincent was right, if I deserved what happened, if I was difficult and ungrateful and— Stop! Julian's voice was firm. Listen to me. Nothing you did, nothing, justified what he did to you. His violence was his choice, his failure, not yours. You didn't deserve it. Rosalind wanted to believe him. After years of Vincent's voice in her head, telling her she was worthless, difficult, deserving of punishment, Julian's words felt like water in a desert. How do you know? She asked quietly. You don't know what I was like with him. Maybe I was difficult. Julian's expression was gentle but certain. Rosalind, I've spent 3 weeks with you. I've seen you at your most vulnerable. And what I've seen is a woman who's intelligent, kind, thoughtful, and stronger than she knows. Whatever Vincent told you about yourself, it was lies. Lies meant to control you. Lies meant to make you believe you deserved abuse. You didn't. You don't. And I need you to start believing that. The storm raged outside, but inside the cottage something shifted. Rosalind looked at Julian, really looked at him, and saw genuine care. Not pity, not obligation, but real concern for her well-being. And for the first time since leaving Vincent, Rosalind let herself believe that maybe she did deserve kindness. Maybe she wasn't broken beyond repair. Maybe she could heal. Will you stay? She asked quietly. Until the storm passes. I don't want to be alone. Julian nodded immediately. Of course, I'll stay as long as you need me. They sat together on the floor, backs against the wall, hands still joined. And as thunder rolled overhead, Rosalind felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. After that night, Rosalind began to truly open up. Over the following weeks, she told Julian everything. About her engagement to Vincent Ashford, about the gradual escalation of control and violence, about the night she finally escaped, about 3 years of running, hiding, surviving. Julian listened to every word, his fury at Vincent growing with each revelation, but he kept his anger controlled, knowing Rosalind needed understanding, not rage. When she finished, days later, she felt lighter. The burden of carrying these secrets alone had been crushing. Now, finally, someone else knew, someone else understood, and believed her. Rosalind, Julian said after she'd shared the worst of it, I need to ask you something. Do you want to press charges against Vincent? What he did was criminal, assault, false imprisonment. I have connections. We could build a case. Rosalind shook her head immediately. No, Julian, you don't understand. Vincent is Lord Ashford, son of an earl, connected to half the peerage. Who would believe me? A woman who ran from her engagement. 2 months after Rosalind arrived, something changed. Julian realized he was in love with her. It wasn't a sudden revelation. It was gradual, built on afternoons of chess and conversation, on watching her slowly heal, on seeing her smile become more frequent, her laughter more genuine, on admiring her strength and resilience, on wanting to spend every moment with her. Julian was terrified. He'd never been in love before. And this particular love was complicated. Rosalind was traumatized, vulnerable. She trusted him, yes, but was that trust genuine affection, or just gratitude to the man who'd saved her? Julian didn't know, and he wouldn't risk Rosalind's recovery by confessing feelings she might not share. But Rosalind was changing too. She'd started to see Julian differently. At first, he'd been just her rescuer, her protector, but over time she'd come to appreciate the man himself, his intelligence, his dry humor, his genuine kindness, the way he listened when she spoke, the way he respected her boundaries, the way he made her feel safe without making her feel weak. Rosalind found herself looking forward to his visits, found herself disappointed when he had to leave, found herself wondering what it would be like to kiss him, and then feeling guilty for those thoughts. She was broken, damaged. What could she possibly offer a man like Julian? Why would he want someone like her? One afternoon, as they sat in the garden, Rosalind had grown brave enough to venture outside regularly now. Julian spoke carefully. Rosalind, I've been thinking. You've been here almost 3 months, And while I'm happy to have you stay as long as you need, I wonder, do you want to do something more? The cottage is yours for life if you want it, but I could also help you start fresh somewhere else, a new identity. Resources to start a business or pursue education, whatever you want. Rosalind felt panic flutter. Was he tired of her, wanting her to leave? Do you want me to go? Julian heard the fear in her voice. God, no. Rosalind, I want you to stay. But I want you to have choices, to have a future, not just hiding. Rosalind considered his words. She'd been existing in a kind of limbo, safe but static. Julian was right. She needed to think about her future. I don't know what I want, she admitted. For 3 years, all I wanted was to survive, to be safe. Now that I have that, I don't know what comes next. Julian's voice was gentle. That's all right. You don't have to know yet. But, Rosalind, I want you to know something. You're not broken. You're not damaged beyond repair. You're a survivor, and you have value beyond your trauma. You're intelligent, talented, kind. You have so much to offer the world. Don't let what Vincent did define the rest of your life. Rosalind felt tears slip down her cheeks. How do you always know what I need to hear? Julian smiled. Because I pay attention. Because you matter to me. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Rosalind looked at Julian, seeing something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Was that affection? More than affection. She must be imagining it. Men like Julian, dukes, powerful men, didn't fall for broken women hiding in their estates, but the way he was looking at her. Rosalind's heart raced. Julian, she said quietly, why have you been so kind to me? Really? Julian took a breath. This was dangerous territory, but Rosalind deserved honesty. Because when I met you, broken and terrified in my stable, I saw someone worth saving. And the more I've gotten to know you, the more I've come to care about you. Care about me how? Rosalind pressed, needing to know. Julian met her eyes. More than I should, probably. Rosalind, you're vulnerable. You're healing. The last thing you need is me complicating things with feelings. So I've tried to keep them to myself, but you asked for honesty. Rosalind's voice was barely a whisper. What feelings? Julian's expression was raw. I'm falling in love with you. I have been for weeks, but I don't expect anything in return. You don't owe me anything. I needed you to know in case it matters. Rosalind stared at him, her mind reeling. Julian loved her. The Duke of Ashmore loved broken, damaged Rosalind? It didn't make sense, but the look in his eyes was unmistakable. He meant it. I don't understand, Rosalind said. Julian, I'm broken. I have nightmares. I flinch at sudden movements. I panic during storms. I have nothing to offer you. Why would you? Julian interrupted gently. Rosalind, stop. You're not broken. You're healing. And as for what you offer me yourself. Your intelligence, your humor, your strength, your perspective, your company. That's more than enough. He paused. But I know you might not feel the same way. And that's all right. I don't expect reciprocation. I just wanted to be honest with you. Rosalind's heart was pounding. Did she feel the same way? She'd been so focused on survival, she hadn't let herself examine her feelings. But now that she did, yes, she loved him too. I think, Rosalind said slowly, I might be falling in love with you too, but Julian, I'm terrified. The last time I trusted a man, it nearly destroyed me. What if I'm wrong about you? What if this is a mistake? Julian took her hand carefully. Then we'll take it slowly. Rosalind, I'm not asking you to jump into anything. I'm just telling you how I feel. We can stay exactly as we are, or we can explore this carefully, at whatever pace you need. There's no pressure, no expectations, just possibility. Rosalind looked at their joined hands. For 3 years, touch had meant pain, but Julian's touch felt different, safe, warm, right. I'd like to explore the possibility, she whispered. Slowly. Julian's smile was brilliant. Slowly. I can do slowly. For 2 blissful weeks, Rosalind and Julian explored their feelings. Slowly, as promised. Long walks in the garden, hands clasped, conversations that stretched into the evening, a tentative kiss that left Rosalind breathless and wanting more. She was learning that love could be gentle, that touch could be tender, that she could trust Julian with her heart. But happiness, Rosalind had learned, was often temporary, and hers was about to be shattered, because Vincent Ashford had not stopped looking for her, and he'd finally tracked her to Ashmore. The question was, what would he do when he found her, and what would Julian do to protect her? It was late afternoon when the rider arrived. Julian was with Rosalind in the cottage when his steward knocked urgently. "Your Grace, there's a Lord Vincent Ashford at the main house. He's demanding an audience, says it's urgent." Rosalind went white. Julian's expression turned to stone. "Vincent is here," Rosalind whispered. "How? How did he find me?" Julian stood. "I don't know, but he's not getting near you. Stay here. Lock the door, don't open it for anyone but me." Rosalind grabbed his arm. "Julian, please, don't confront him. He's dangerous. He'll hurt you." Julian's smile was cold. "He can try. Rosalind, trust me, I won't let him take you." Then he was gone, striding toward the main house with fury in every step. Vincent Ashford was in Julian's study when Julian entered. He was a handsome man, impeccably dressed, with an aristocratic bearing that concealed his cruelty. "Duke Ashmore," Vincent greeted him with false warmth. "Thank you for seeing me. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I'm searching for someone. My fiancée, Rosalind Fairfax. She's been missing for 3 years. I have reason to believe she may have passed through your estate." Julian's expression was carefully neutral. "And what makes you think that?" Vincent smiled. "I've been tracking her movements. A woman matching her description was seen on the road near here 3 months ago. I'm concerned for her welfare. Rosalind is unstable. She needs help." Julian felt rage coil in his gut. This man, this monster who terrorized Rosalind, was standing in his home calling her unstable, claiming to be concerned. Julian wanted to throw Vincent out physically, but he needed to be strategic. "I haven't seen anyone matching that description." Julian lied smoothly. "If I had, I would have contacted the authorities. A missing person is a serious matter." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "Are you certain? Perhaps one of your staff saw something?" Julian met his gaze steadily. "I'm certain. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have estate matters to attend to." Vincent stood his ground. "With respect. Your Grace, I'd like permission to search your grounds, just to be thorough." Julian's voice turned cold. "Permission denied. This is my property. You have no authority here." Vincent's facade cracked slightly. "Your Grace, I'm trying to be civil, but Rosalind is my fiancée. I have a right to find her." Julian stepped closer, using his height to advantage. "You have no rights here, Ashford, and I'd be careful about claiming someone as your fiancée when, from what I understand, the engagement was broken years ago." Vincent's eyes flashed. "So, you have seen her. Where is she?" Julian's smile was dangerous. "I didn't say that, but hypothetically, if a woman had sought refuge on my estate, fleeing from violence, I would be bound by honor to protect her, and I would never surrender her to her abuser. Hypothetically speaking, of course." Vincent went pale with rage. "You can't keep her from me. I'll—" "Sell what?" Julian interrupted. "Make threats against a duke? That would be unwise. Ashford, I'm going to say this once. Leave my estate. Don't return. And if I hear that you've been harassing anyone seeking refuge from violence, I will use every ounce of my influence to destroy you. Your reputation, your social standing, your family's connections, all of it gone. Do you understand?" Vincent was shaking with fury. "This isn't over. Rosalind belongs to me. I'll get her back." Julian's voice was ice. "She never belonged to you. She's a person, not property. And she's under my protection now. You can't touch her. Now get out before I have you thrown out." Vincent left, but the threat in his parting glance was unmistakable. This was far from over. Julian returned to the cottage to find Rosalind pacing frantically. She looked up when he entered. "What happened? Did you see him? What did he say?" Julian took her hands. "He's gone. I told him I hadn't seen you and ordered him off the estate." Rosalind shook her head. "He won't believe you. He'll come back or send people to watch the estate or—" She was spiraling into panic. Julian cupped her face gently. "Rosalind, listen to me. He can't get to you here. I have guards, staff, resources. He's just one man and he can't fight a duke. Rosalind's voice broke. You don't know him. He's relentless, obsessed. He won't stop until he has me back. And I can't go back to him. I'd rather die. Julian pulled her close. You're not going to die, and you're not going back to him. Rosalind, I promise you, over my dead body will Vincent Ashford get near you again. Rosalind clung to him, terrified. What do we do? Julian's mind raced. Vincent knew Rosalind was here, or strongly suspected it. He'd be watching the estate, waiting for proof. They needed a permanent solution. We have a few options, Julian said carefully. We could send you somewhere else. Somewhere Vincent would never think to look, or... He hesitated. Or what? Rosalind asked. Julian took a breath. Or we make it impossible for him to claim you. Rosalind, if you were married to someone else, Vincent would have no legal standing. You'd be protected by law, by social convention. He couldn't touch you. Rosalind stared at him. Are you suggesting a marriage of convenience to protect me? Julian's expression was serious. Not convenience. Rosalind, I told you I love you. I meant it. If you married me, it wouldn't be convenience. It would be real, at least on my side. I know it's fast. I know you're not ready. But if the alternative is you running again, or worse, Vincent taking you... He trailed off. Rosalind's mind spun. Marriage. To Julian. It would solve everything. She'd be legally beyond Vincent's reach, protected, safe. But marriage was also what had nearly destroyed her before. Could she really do it again? Could she trust Julian with that much power over her life? I need to think, she whispered. Julian nodded. Take all the time you need. Rosalind spent 2 days wrestling with her decision. Julian had made it clear. The choice was entirely hers. If she wanted to marry him, wonderful. If she wanted him to send her somewhere else to hide, he'd arrange it. If she wanted to stay in the cottage and risk Vincent discovering her, Julian would increase security. There was no pressure, no manipulation, just options. And that freedom to choose, something Vincent had never given her, made all the difference. On the 3rd day, Rosalind went to find Julian. He was in his study reviewing estate documents. Julian, she said from the doorway, I've made my decision. Julian stood immediately. Tell me. Rosalind took a breath. I want to marry you. Not because I'm desperate, not just for protection, but because I love you and I trust you, and I want a future with you. Julian crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling Rosalind into his arms. Are you sure? Rosalind, I don't want you to do this out of fear. I want you to choose me because you want me, not because you need me. Rosalind looked up at him. I want you. Julian, you've given me back my life, my hope, my ability to trust. I'm still healing. I still have fears, but I love you. And yes, I want to marry you. Julian kissed her then, deeply, passionately, and Rosalind kissed him back with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. How soon can we marry? Rosalind asked. Julian's smile was fierce. Tomorrow, if you want. But Rosalind, I want to do this properly. I want you to have a real wedding, a real marriage, not just escape. What? Rosalind shook her head. I don't need elaborate, I just need you, and I need to be legally beyond Vincent's reach before he does something desperate. Julian understood. We'll marry by special license. I can have one by tomorrow. But Rosalind, after we're married, I want you to know you can take as much time as you need. We don't have to consummate immediately. We can wait until you're ready. Years, if necessary. I'm not Vincent. I'll never demand anything from you. Rosalind felt tears of gratitude. I know. That's why I love you. They married 2 days later in the estate's private chapel. The Dowager Duchess attended, having been quickly informed and surprisingly supportive once Julian explained. No one else knew. It was small, quiet, and perfect. The marriage was legally binding. Rosalind was now the Duchess of Ashmore, beyond Vincent's reach. That night Julian kept his promise. They shared a room, Rosalind's choice, but Julian didn't pressure her for intimacy. They simply talked late into the night about their future. about the life they'd built together, about Rosalind's dreams now that she was finally free. "I want to help women," Rosalind said quietly. "Women like me, who are trapped in violent situations. I want to create refuges, places where they can escape, rebuild, like you did for me." Julian took her hand. "Then we'll do it. Together. We'll use the Ashmore resources to create safe houses across England. You'll never be just a duchess, Rosalind. You'll be a force for change." But Vincent wasn't finished. 2 weeks after the wedding, he returned, this time with a lawyer and a magistrate. He demanded to see Rosalind, claiming she'd been coerced. The magistrate, required by law to investigate such claims, asked to speak with Rosalind privately. Julian reluctantly agreed, but insisted on being nearby. Rosalind met with the magistrate in the drawing room. He was an older man, stern but fair-looking. "Your Grace," he addressed her formally. She was a duchess now, he had to acknowledge that. "Lord Ashford claims you're being held against your will, that the Duke coerced you into marriage. Is this true?" Rosalind met his eyes steadily. "No, it's not true. I married the Duke of my own free will. I love him." The magistrate studied her. "Lord Ashford says you were his fiancée, that you ran away 3 years ago in an unstable state, that he's been searching for you out of concern." Rosalind felt old fear rise but pushed it down. She was safe now. Vincent couldn't hurt her anymore. "Lord Ashford was my fiancé," Rosalind said clearly, "but I ended the engagement because he was violent. He beat me repeatedly. I have scars if you need to see them. I ran to save my life. The Duke offered me sanctuary. We fell in love. We married. That's the truth." The magistrate's expression shifted. "You're accusing Lord Ashford of assault?" Rosalind nodded. "Yes, and false imprisonment, and emotional cruelty. I can provide details if necessary." The magistrate looked uncomfortable. Accusations against nobility were always complicated, but a duchess accusing a lord, that had weight. "I'll need to speak with the Duke." Julian was called in. He corroborated Rosalind's story, explained how he'd found her in his stable, bruised and terrified, how she'd slowly revealed the abuse, how they'd fallen in love and married. The magistrate listened, then made his decision. "Based on what I've heard, there's no evidence of coercion. Her Grace appears to have married freely. As for the allegations against Lord Ashford, that's a separate matter. Your Grace, if you wish to press charges, you may do so, but it would require a formal complaint and investigation." Rosalind looked at Julian. He nodded encouragingly. Whatever she decided, he'd support. Rosalind took a breath. "I want to press charges. Not because I want revenge, but because Vincent will do this to someone else if he's not stopped. He's dangerous. He needs to face consequences." The magistrate nodded. "Very well. I'll begin an investigation. Be warned, Your Grace. This will be difficult. Lord Ashford comes from a powerful family. They'll fight these accusations." Rosalind's voice was steady. "I know, but I'm a duchess now. I have power too, and I have the truth. That has to count for something." The magistrate looked at her with something like respect. "It does, Your Grace, it does." He left to inform Vincent. Julian pulled Rosalind close. "You were magnificent. I'm so proud of you." Rosalind rested her head on his chest. "I'm terrified, but also free." The investigation took months. Vincent fought viciously, hiring expensive lawyers, calling in favors from powerful friends. But Rosalind was a duchess. Julian was one of the most influential men in England. And when other women came forward, women Vincent had courted and abused before Rosalind, the case became undeniable. Vincent Ashford was convicted of assault and sentenced to 2 years in prison. His reputation was destroyed. His family disowned him. It wasn't perfect justice. 2 years wasn't enough for 3 years of terror, but it was something. And it sent a message. Violence against women, even by nobility, had consequences. Rosalind had survived, and more than that, she'd fought back. She'd won. During those months of legal proceedings, Rosalind and Julian's marriage deepened. They learned each other's rhythms. Julian learned that Rosalind needed space sometimes, needed to process her trauma on her own terms. Rosalind learned that Julian's protectiveness came from love, not control, that he'd respect her boundaries always, that she could trust him completely. 6 months into their marriage, Rosalind finally felt ready for physical intimacy. She came to Julian one evening. "I'm ready," she said simply. Julian understood immediately. "Are you sure?" "Rosalind, there's no rush. I meant what I said. I can wait." Rosalind smiled. "I know. That's why I'm ready. Because I know you'll wait. Because I trust you completely. Because I love you. And I want this." Their first time together was gentle, tender, and healing. Julian was patient, checking in with Rosalind constantly, making sure she was comfortable, letting her set the pace. When Rosalind cried afterward, Julian held her close. "Did I hurt you?" he asked, concerned. Rosalind shook her head. "No, these are happy tears. Julian, you made me feel safe, loved, beautiful. For the first time, intimacy felt like something I chose, something good, not something I had to endure." Julian kissed her forehead. "It will always be your choice, always. I love you, Rosalind, every part of you, including the parts that are still healing." Rosalind smiled through her tears. "I love you too. Thank you for waiting, for understanding, for being exactly who you are." 1 year after Rosalind arrived at Ashmore, they stood in the stable where Julian had first found her. They'd come here deliberately, to mark the anniversary. Rosalind looked at the spot where she'd slept that desperate night. "I can't believe it's been a year. I can't believe how much has changed." Julian wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You've changed. You're not the terrified woman I found in the hay. You're strong, confident, happy. I can see it in your eyes." Rosalind turned in his arms. "You helped me become this person. You gave me safety, time, love. You let me heal at my own pace. Not many men would have been so patient." Julian smiled. "Not many women would have been so brave. Rosalind, you saved yourself. I just provided the space for you to do it." Rosalind kissed him softly. "We saved each other. You needed purpose, I needed safety. We gave each other what we needed, and we built something beautiful in the process." She paused. "Julian, I have news. I was going to wait to tell you, but this seems like the perfect moment. I'm pregnant." Julian's eyes widened. "Pregnant? Rosalind, are you happy about it? I know with your past." Rosalind's smile was radiant. "I'm terrified, but yes, I'm happy. Because this baby will be created in love, raised in safety. They'll never know violence or fear. We'll make sure of it." Julian pulled her close, overwhelmed with emotion. "We will, I promise. Our child will know only love, only safety, only what family should be." Their daughter was born 9 months later. They named her Hope because that's what she represented. Hope that trauma could be healed, that love could triumph over fear, that broken people could become whole again. As Julian held his daughter for the first time, Rosalind sleeping peacefully nearby, he thought about the morning he'd found her in the stable. If someone had told him then that the terrified woman in the hay would become his wife, the mother of his child, the love of his life, he wouldn't have believed them. But here they were. Proof that sometimes the people who need saving the most are the ones who end up saving us. Rosalind had needed his protection, but she'd given him purpose, meaning, love beyond measure. Rosalind and Julian kept their promise. They used the Ashmore resources to establish safe houses across England, places where women fleeing violence could find refuge. Rosalind ran the program personally, using her experience to help others. She never hid her past. Instead, she shared it, showing other survivors that healing was possible, that life after trauma could be beautiful. She became known as the Duchess who championed the forgotten, the woman who'd survived hell and turned her pain into purpose. Julian supported her always, proud of the woman who'd chosen to fight rather than hide. Together, they changed countless lives and proved that sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the darkest places. Years later, Rosalind and Julian sat in their garden, watching their 3 children play. Their eldest, Hope, was now 7 years old. She was teaching her younger brothers how to play chess, just as Rosalind's father had taught her. Rosalind smiled at the sight. "She's going to be brilliant at that," Julian observed, "just like her mother." Rosalind leaned against him. I was thinking about that night in the stable. How terrified I was. How certain I was that I'd never be safe again, never be happy again. Julian kissed her temple. And now? Rosalind looked at her family, her husband, her children, the life they'd built together. Now I understand that sometimes the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns. I found you at dawn, Julian, and you gave me everything. This is Crown of Secrets, where we tell stories of survival, healing, and love found in unexpected places. Rosalind Fairfax's journey reminds us that escape is not weakness, it's strength. That running from danger is not cowardice, it's wisdom. That breaking is not the end, it's often the beginning of becoming stronger. Rosalind slept in a stable, desperate and afraid, but she woke to a duke who saw her worth, who protected without controlling, who loved without demanding, who gave her space to heal and time to trust. And in return, Rosalind gave Julian purpose. She showed him that heroism isn't just grand gestures. Sometimes it's simply offering safety when someone needs it most. If you found yourself in this story, if you've ever run from someone who hurt you, if you've ever felt broken beyond repair, if you've ever wondered if you'd ever feel safe again, remember Rosalind's courage. She ran. She survived. She healed. She loved again. You can too. If you found yourself in Julian, if you've ever wanted to help someone but didn't know how, if you've ever seen someone hurting and wished you could fix it, remember his patience. He offered safety without strings. Time without pressure, love without demands, that's what healing requires. And if you're currently in danger, if someone is hurting you, please know you deserve safety, you deserve peace, you deserve love that doesn't hurt. Run if you need to. Seek help. You're worth saving. Thank you for joining us on Rosalind and Julian's journey from desperation to hope, from fear to love, from brokenness to wholeness. If this story moved you, share it. You never know who might need to hear that escape is possible, that healing is achievable, that love can be gentle. Subscribe to Crown of Secrets for more stories of resilience, redemption, and the extraordinary strength of ordinary people facing impossible odds. Turn on notifications. Leave your thoughts in the comments, because every survivor's story matters. Every escape is worth celebrating, and every person who offers sanctuary to someone in need is a hero. Until next time, remember, you are not broken, you are surviving, and that is extraordinary.